Hello and welcome to another edition of Asia Pacific Society of Association Executive Podcast. I have the pleasure to introduce Dean West. Dean West is the president of Association Laboratory, leads the renowned research and consulting firm serving trade, association, and professional societies with deep expertise in strategy, governance, and member engagement. He helps organizations navigate disruption and drive growth. His data-driven insights and forward-looking analysis empower association executives to make confident and informed decisions. Welcome, Dean, to another edition of APSAE Podcast.
Thank you very much, Prasant. It's a pleasure and an honor to be part of it.
Very interestingly, we are going through amazing geopolitical situation, lots of upheaval, and that makes it interesting in a way that how associations are responding to this. If I kind of try to pick your brain on this, how is the situation at the Western Hemisphere in terms of the association community? What are you witnessing?
I think it's difficult to describe an association-wide context because so many associations are dependent on their industry. Within the United States and arguably Europe, the more the association is connected either financially or through the subsidization of its members to the central government, and particularly in the United States, the more likely they are to be disrupted. So in the United States, for example, many of the STEM professions, science, technology, engineering, math, there are a lot of jobs in the federal government. And so when those jobs are reduced, as an example, through budget cutting efforts over the last year, then the members of those associations are less likely to be subsidized. We have some clients where the members were subsidized or the associations were subsidized by COVID relief funds, and those funds have now run out. I think the lesson for associations is to not become overly concentrated or dependent on a singular source of revenue, or have your members dependent on a singular source of revenue. And the more dependent you are on a federal government or a state government or a provincial government, the more likely you are to be at the wrong end of government or policy change.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
And I think the other part of that, just to end that we have other organizations we work with who could not be happier right now. And that's why I say the economy here is very strong in the United States, for example. So one association might be going through upheaval because their members are reliant on government funding or reimbursement for association engagement, where another association's members are struggling to find enough workers to staff their offices and their factories because they're growing so dramatically. And so that's why as a sector it's difficult. As an association, you have to understand where your risk is. And is that risk concentrated or so concentrated that you have to do something about it, whether it's the government, whether it's whether it's geopolitical upheaval, the war in Ukraine or Iran, etc., whether it's changes in tax policy, whatever it might be. The more you concentrate your risk, the more likely you are to be at risk.
Very well. That kind of connected with the leadership issue also, right? How the leaders are reacting from an association point of view. And you have studied hundreds of associations over several decades. What's the one pattern that you see that most leaders don't want to admit or hate to admit?
They don't want to admit they're unprepared for the decisions they're being asked to make. Many volunteer leaders arrive at the board level hoping to simply enjoy their final years of service to the association. They aren't necessarily selected for their decision-making competencies. They're not necessarily trained or oriented to make consequential decisions, and yet many of them find themselves in those circumstances. And so they have everything to lose but nothing to gain, because then they go off the board, and 3 years from now, if the decisions they made were successful, no one will remember. But if they make a mistake while they're on the board, everyone will remember. So as a volunteer leader right now, you're poorly prepared to make the decisions you're being asked to make, but making those decisions is going to be central to the success, albeit the survival, of many associations.
Men, as popularly we say, in our work and business, it's always important to differentiate between what is important versus what is urgent. So what kind of association or what separates the association that actually grow in this scenario and that's then just stay busy?
I think there's two things that successful or what I would label a modern association will do or think differently about. I think the first is a leadership perspective. Too often our leaders think in terms of what are too short term. What do we have to get done by the next board meeting or within this next year? When what they should start to do is look at longer time frames. You wouldn't start an association today and ask yourself where you want to be 3 months from now, but that's how many association CEOs now manage, from board meeting to board meeting and from budget year to budget year. What that does is limit their creativity. And the example I sometimes use is, well, if you're going to do an annual meeting every single year, what you really need is not an annual meeting plan, but a 5-year business plan for that meeting. Where do you want to be in 5 years in terms of growth and revenue and exhibitor participation and things of that nature? So when you broaden your time frame, it allows you to build more complete business models that are more likely to be successful. I think the second thing is we have to start looking at everything as a product or a project. We're working with a client right now, for example, where we're attempting to take the different pieces of the puzzle at organization and put them together in a cohesive part. I think too often we look at different domains, different jobs, different initiatives as separate pieces of this broader puzzle. And so I think taking a systems approach or a process approach that looks at constantly adjusting to an environment as opposed to reacting to it, combined with that leadership is the two things. So the two lessons I think are, one, leadership has to take a longer term view of where their association should expect to be in 3 and 5 years down the road. And two, we have to build systems that are designed to adapt to a changing environment, not react to it.
So you were talking about a long-term strategy.
In many respects.
So let me ask you a very difficult question, and I promise you that I'm not going to hold you responsible for it.
Okay.
How much this association strategy is real, or how much is just documentation that never get used?
Well, from a strategic planning standpoint, simply going through the planning exercise is beneficial. If you're sitting around a table in a cafe talking about the future of your industry or profession and deciding what to do as a result of that, you're going to do better than if you don't have those conversations. As your organization gets larger and more complex, the more likely a more professionalized approach and sophisticated approach will benefit you because your audiences become more complex. I think the danger becomes when we think that the process of strategy development is the point of it. And that is not the point. So for example, we describe our strategic planning documents as discussion guides. So where people go wrong is they think creating a document that everyone agrees to is the point of the exercise. When the point of the exercise is to determine strategy, the documents are simply there to help those discussions along. And so I think what a lot of CEOs and boards become comfortable with is we have created the document, we have done our task to create a strategic plan, now we can continue to do what we've always done without any real change. Or without sufficient internal political will to make a big change that comes out of it. Because again, as I said earlier, if I'm on the board, it's easier to get through my 1 or 2 or 3 years without causing trouble or without creating controversy. I simply want to enjoy my time in the board. They aren't put on the board to make consequential decisions. And they may want to, but they're not prepared for it. And the planning process has to help them make better decisions. And oftentimes it's not.
I'm sure there will be agreement and disagreement to this with the community, but also at the same time, you do annual research and come out with a forward documentation every year, and I'm sure that gives a lot of insights into how the associations are functioning in different areas. And on a particular level, association also invest into research themselves. But how often does it actually change decision? What is the biggest mistake association make when interpreting data about their members? What has been your experience in this?
Generally speaking, I would say there's been great progress within the association community at using data. I'm now in year 27 of my business. And when I first began Association Laboratory, I used to give speeches on why market research was important. I had to convince the community to do it. That is no longer the case. The mistake that is currently being made in association spheres that is not made in corporate circles is the association community continues to look at research as a fragmented activity. They do a member satisfaction study 1 year, then they do a separate study for strategic planning, then a completely separate study to evaluate their meeting, et cetera, et cetera. And they're completely different pieces, but of the same puzzle. It's more expensive to do it. It's more difficult to do it. The learning from it, it doesn't aggregate over time because they take individual research as a project or data as a project. So a modern association is going to create a system. We're going to say there are some fundamental questions we have to answer all of the time, over time. And so what we're going to do is set up a system of data collection and data analysis and interpretation so that we can continue to do that year in and year out, almost like a utility. No one ever asks if their water is going to work or if their lights are going to work for their office. Research should be treated in a similar fashion. It's a utility necessary for everyone to make better decisions. The more you use it, the better your decisions. The longer you use it, the better your decisions. And better decisions mean better outcomes.
This is so valuable. Absolutely. We must treat, as you pointed correctly, like water, electricity should be embedded within the association
Good word.
Activity. Now, let me shift that conversation from an Asia Pacific perspective, particularly, because we are talking about Asia Pacific under the Asia Pacific Society of Association Executive, the UNIFOL Association. And I realize, and I'm sure you'd agree, the majority of the association in West versus in Asia is different. Quite a lot of time, I see Asia Pacific associations are more still very much mission-centric, mission-driven. That doesn't mean Western associations are not, but I think Asian associations still looking at that basic, which I think is very, very fundamental still today, that association must be mission-driven. But when we talk about Asia Pacific perspective, what difference that you envisage in terms of how association in Asia Pacific, top 3 things they need to address to bring their association into real action?
I think the first thing is, I think there are lessons to be learned from the U.S. model, but just because there are lessons to be learned doesn't mean the U.S. model should be emulated. U.S. associations are based on the history of the United States and its interaction between industries and professions. They're a consequence of communities attempting to professionalize and a consequence of communities attempting to work with each other and within the United States, and they formed the way they formed. So in the Asia Pacific region, you've got communities and countries that have been interacting and working together to get better and be more successful for thousands of years. So the question is, what model of an association within that environment reflects the unique environment? Again, Asia Pacific is not a singular place, as we all know.
Sure.
And so I think the lesson to executives and the Asia Pacific Society of Association executives is to ask themselves, what is unique about what we're trying to get accomplished, and what is unique about our own cultures and our own communities, our own government relationships that need to be central to how we structure our association? Are there lessons from the US? Are there lessons from the European Union that can inform that, but not direct it? So there is no best way to do it, if that makes sense, Prasant. And so I would, if I was beginning an association in the Asia Pacific region, I would be flexible about my business model. I would be flexible about creating a platform for other people's and other companies' success. And there are a lot of ways to do that, not a singular way. And I'm excited to see, frankly, what the community does in the Asia Pacific region.
Yes, and when you talk about association business model, that's where sometimes I see there's a disconnect with that word, okay? whereas it is acceptable in Western side of it. In Asia, because of the cultural background, because of their community, and different language, as you said, Asia Pacific is not one particular market which is bound by one language and a specific culture. We are dealing with at least 20-30 different types of culture on this, from food to do their activities and everything, and their community development. If an Asia Pacific association want to thrive, let's put it that way, they are doing well. If they have to thrive in this new geopolitical, what are the 5 top things that you would want them to focus on?
I think there are several questions that you need to be able to answer fairly clearly. One is, who are you designing yourself to serve? Okay. That could be an end customer, an end user. I'm not going to worry about business terminology. But when you sit down to say, we are going to exist in association and we're designing yourself to serve these people or these companies, how do you fill in that gap or that box? And that's often where boards struggle. So, for example, should they serve a group of people within a singular country, across multiple countries, an industry that is more expansive or less expansive? That's a difficult question. The second big question is, what is the world in which they live and work? We know from our research that the environment surrounding you impacts your needs. So you have to understand what's influencing the people or the companies you're designing yourself to serve if you want to truly understand their needs. And you have to understand not just today, but what it's going to look like in 2, 3, and 4 years from now, so that you can, again, not react, but adapt as the world changes. The third thing you need to understand is, what are they trying to accomplish? Because what you want to do is align yourself with their goals, but you also want to determine if what they're trying to accomplish is something you're designing yourself to support, because you may not be. Okay, the fourth thing I would answer is, what's their relationship with you? That could be a membership relationship, it could be a sponsor relationship, it could be an exhibitor, it could be simply part of your community, a speaker. Pick your definition. What is their relationship with you? And then finally, how is that relationship influenced by alternatives or competitors? Now, an alternative might be they don't want to travel to participate with you. Their family on time is an alternative. An alternative could be a competitor. An alternative could be a component of you. If you're a national group, it could be a provincial group as an example of the same group. So if you answer those 5 questions, either casually, again, around a meeting table or through sophisticated research, you can make strategy decisions.
So association does what you are suggesting, and if they don't, let's say, hypothetically, what change do you see in next 3 years with this association community?
I think based on our research, there's a couple of things we are seeing. One is, particularly within traditional governance systems, decision-making has been slow and inefficient, and the external environment is going to punish organizations of any sort that are slow and inefficient. And as a result, I think we will see over the next 5 years a substantial transition in CEOs and board members. CEOs and board members who are unprepared to make decisions that need to be made, working in systems that are not designed to make them quickly. Many associations have governance models designed for the 1800s, in the horse and buggy days. They're ill-prepared to work effectively, even with good leaders, in the modern age. And so what we are going to see over the next 5 years is a transformation of how associations make decisions. The ones that successfully get through that transition will find an important role in societies and industries. The ones that do not, in the near term, will look no different, but in the long term will slowly diminish and go away and be replaced by organizations that are more modern and more adaptive. We're working with some clients right now struggling to address leadership decisions that they knew they had 5, 6, 7 years ago. And so they're still trying to fix them. Okay. And they're still struggling to fix them. One of our clients, brand new chairman of the board, brand new CEO, are now attempting to make those changes. We're part of that transformation with them. And that I'm not clear that they'll be successful yet. But if you can't make faster, better decisions in a world that punishes you if you don't, your long-term success is going to be more challenging. And so if I was, particularly when I think of the Asia Pacific region, how dynamic the economies are, how dynamic the peoples are, then that statement becomes even more important. So you want to design your organization, you want to design your leadership culture to be adaptable to a fast-changing environment. And so if you had to start your association today, you would not model some of the governance models that were designed in the 1800s. Because you have AI, you have technology, you can do communication like you and I are doing. We'll soon have simultaneous translation, which is important across country boundaries because of AI. And so you design a very different mechanism for your association, but the people you serve might be the same. The issues that are facing them, you still have to understand. What they're trying to get done, you still have to assess. The relationship with you still need to know, and you still have to understand competitors. It's the system by which you investigate it, make decisions, and take action on it that's going to have to be more adaptable and faster.
And that brings another interesting perspective about young members joining association.
Sure.
Of course, Western countries, our aging population is struggling with it. Whereas on the other side, Asia Pacific, which is half of the humanity lives here, and quite a lot of economies have less than more people, 60% of their population is under 30 or 35. And these younger populations are also, or potential members, are also pulled into different direction of different technology. Do they see the value of our association? And then if this Asia Pacific Association need to really capture them or to have them on board, what they should do?
So I think one of the misconceptions we have about membership is the myth that people used to have to join. And I've heard that my entire career. I'm in my 40th year in association management leadership. In my entire career, I've been told people have to join. That's why we have members. People didn't have to join. The difference between now and then, and we test this in our sector research, is the number of choices you have and things you have to join. The younger generation, however you define it, they join things every single day. It's not that they don't join things, it's they don't join you. And so what is it you offer to them that makes it worth their while? Because they're picking across a dozen different entities they might join. It could be active at their church, active at their school, active with a local organization instead of a national organization. They could be receive resources to their employer networks. Okay, so they have nothing but choices on entities to participate and give you time, money, and energy. Why you? And so I think the issue for associations is to design a pathway for younger professionals to engage with their peers and with mentors throughout their career. And they're not going to be permanently active with you. They will come in and they'll go out, and they'll come in and go out as their life changes. And that's okay. That's okay. You want to be there when they need you. And again, if I was running an association in the Asia Pacific region, I've determined who I'm trying to serve. I've got the front end of that member funnel or participant funnel. We often use an engagement strategy, not a membership strategy, because you want them involved whether or not they're a member. And you start to say, okay, how do I help them at this stage of their career? What did you want to know when you're early in your career? You wanted some basic competencies you had to learn, and there's people you wanted to meet. But at the same time, you didn't have as much time or money or control because you were younger. And so you have to reflect the realities of that younger marketplace. And once you've demonstrated them that you're an organization of value, it's much easier to keep them. But then you have to understand, now that they've been in the profession 5 or 10 years, their needs are different. And what their expectations of you are different. I think one of my favorite studies, just to close out this question, Prasant, and I'm sorry I'm so long-winded on it. So we did a study for the International Coaching Federation, and we looked at how their younger, as in newer members, differed from their more senior members. And what was interesting there, and I'm simplifying it, their younger members were interested in the path to certification. It was about validating their competency. But as they became more senior, they were more likely to have a coaching practice and were more interested in building their business. So a younger or newer member was more interested in educational programming that taught them how to be a better coach, that led them to their certification. As they got older, they were more interested in education that helped them build their practice and get business and run that practice effectively. Their needs were simply different. So we can't pretend that a 25-year-old engineer, a 35-year-old engineer, a 45-year-old engineer, and a 55-year-old engineer have the same needs, because they're all 4 engineers. And that's when we get into who are you designing yourself to serve question. And I think that's where we have to get more sophisticated as globally, as an industry, at understanding that front end of that funnel, how those needs change over time, and how to adapt as they do.
This is such a valuable insight. It's not about only, and as you pointed correctly, it's not about joining, but
Right.
staying back.
Yeah.
And in order for them to create, for association to create that glue or stickiness, is that how you are working towards their specific need in different time frame.
Right.
And why I raise this topic, because in Asia Pacific, quite a lot of practice in associations are life membership, okay, which is not the case in other part of the world. And so maybe by doing that, association wanting to reduce their work, or maybe they wanted them to be involved as they grow old. But of course, world has since changed. And as more and more younger member join or association approach, most of the time they don't know how to structure that call,
Right.
which they would respond that way. I think this will be very, very valuable. And that is exactly the reason why APSAE was born, bringing association leaders together to share best practices, hear from people like you, hear from other people, and to structure, because they're not just managing the association. I think they need to understand they are also building a nation, building a region.
You're building a community. Membership is not the solution to every person's problem.
Correct.
And so what you want to do is build a community of people who can rely on each other to support each other, and you are a platform for their success. So if you continually ask yourself, how am I a platform for this person or this company's success? I think a lot of decisions get easier. And if you can't answer that question, then you need to begin talking to your market. What are you trying to accomplish? What's influencing at work or in your profession? Things of that nature. Okay. And understand there is no fixed solution, no static solution. Those solutions will change over time as the people change over time, and that's okay. That's a feature of it, not a bug. And so I think that the danger out of an association leader in Asia Pacific is creating a static organization that is not prepared to change over time, because they're going to have to reflect how their audience is changing. And so that means you need governance that is adaptable and prepared to make consequential decisions. It means you need a staff team, whether it's a small staff or a big staff, that is capable of adapting to change, because your market is going to change. And so the more you put in place mechanisms to inform those conversations, the more you put in place a staff team and volunteer leadership corps that expect to be part of change, not resistant to it, the easier everything becomes. And at the end of the year, if you can look the people in the eye that you've chosen to serve and say, are you better off as a result of your participation in our association? If that person says yes, then you've been successful. And I think that at the end of the day, regardless of where you are in the world, that's what many associations stand for, is how do we help you be more successful in your life, whatever that means to you. Membership is the solution. So are meetings. So is certification. So is advocating for state, provincial, and federal governments. So all of these are mechanisms to make people's lives better. And the more you can communicate that and the more you can deliver on it, the more likely you are to be successful. And groups like the Asia Pacific SAE are essential because it's not that you need to learn lessons from the US or the EU, it's that you have to generate your own internal knowledge, solutions that are unique to the culture of your country or of your region, unique to the communities you're trying to serve. And the way I describe it is you're not going to solve these problems today, and you're not going to solve them by yourself. And groups like Asia Pacific SAE are central communities to comparing notes and building networks that allow our executive core in that part of the world to make progress without repeating mistakes that are made somewhere else. Because nobody wants to do that. And I think it's central that these communities communicate, that they discuss the research, they discuss best practices, and they compare notes with each other and learn and teach the people behind us so that they can pick up what we leave behind and carry it forward.
This is so valuable, and thank you for that. In fact, we proposed also that association looking forward should be constituted with your help in terms of Asia Pacific, so that at the end of the year we are able to go back to these members and the people, those who are involved with this, to say, okay, this is where we started and this is where it is going. And I completely understand as a APSAE, we need to be nimble, we need to be learning continuously, to hear people and to observe how our world is changing and how we need to be in a flexible mindset with that focus, that our objective, which is to educate the community so that they are able to do better for their member and be prepared with this our changing world. Actually,
I think sometimes when on podcasts like this, Prasant, we become focused on challenges and the problems we face in profession, and that's not uncommon in any industry. But I think I'd like maybe to tell a little anecdote. So I had met with the board directors of one of our clients. We'd done strategic planning for them, and we were writing up their draft plan in a hotel lobby here in Chicago. At the same time, across the street, there was a trade show called the Beauty Show, and these are companies that sell beauty products, haircut, to cut your hair and things of that nature. Okay. And it is not a sophisticated show. It is not a big medical show or some things we'd be familiar with on the international scene. It's very local. And so I spoke with two of the participants, and they spoke very passionately about a new makeup technique and how it works better with particularly people who have discolored skin. And it was the same conversation I'd had with the oral and maxillofacial surgeons. They were equally excited about their profession, equally excited about innovations in their profession, equally excited to be part of it. And I think oftentimes when we start working with more professional groups or more corporate associations that have been around a long time, we forget there are all these communities all over the world working every single day to be better and to make their communities better and to make their professions better. And every single day in small hotel lobbies, in conference rooms, in banquet halls, in restaurants all over the world. And it's exciting to see that and to be part of it. So I think as association leaders, it's important for us to recognize all the things we want to take place are already taking place without us. How do we use our association expertise to capture and improve those efforts? And so that the people can work hard on their own behalf to make their own lives and their own communities better, because they're already doing the work. How do we position ourselves as a platform for that? And you can see it every single day in every single hotel all over the world. Groups trying to do that. And I think that's really exciting to have an opportunity to be part of that. And that's all we have to do, is be a part of it. And I think there's nothing but a great future for us if we can figure out how to do that and frankly get out of our own way sometimes.
Absolutely. In fact, you pointed a very, very important point based on which the APSAE was born originally, is that what we realize that and what we know associations are as good as their member, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So unless we are able to hear every member or potential member, otherwise we are only serving some of the bigger player. And historically, when we looked at or the data that we see in Asia Pacific, 70 to 80% of the member come from SMEs or MSMEs, micro and small medium sector, while on the board they do not have too much voice. So majority of the decision or activity is keeping in mind this 20% people. Again, examples are not exceptions, are not example. So there are a lot of associations doing great work, but majorly are hearing those 20% and the decisions are done back. So that is what APSAE want to change. We want to ensure that our members, association members, have the tools and toolkits to be able to capture those views, to hear, and these are learned behavior. As I said, they need to come from mission-driven to also driven where members are engaged and actively engaged.
I think that's actually a common problem in the United States as well, Prasant, is we call it structural exclusion, where one of our clients, if you want to be on their board of directors, you need two things. You need time, because you have to show up someplace, and you need money. And so what they end up with in their leadership are people who are semi-retired. That gives them time and wealth. But if you're a young couple with children, it's very difficult to participate. And so another example is many organizations their boards are made up of academics who receive credit for their participation at work and have that subsidized, where people in the private sector do not. And so they make decisions that benefit academic members, or they make decisions from the perspective of an academic that may not be in alignment with the average everyday member. And so structurally, when you look at your leaders, they're trying to do good work. Okay, so they're benevolent, but if their perspective is limited, then they're going to make decisions with a limited viewpoint. And that's where I think from the APSAE standpoint, you can start to compare notes as to why your board might not be helping you as much as you would like, or why your own staff team might not be helping you as much as you like. It's also a reason for us, for example, when we publish our sector research, we include discussion guides on it. So you can take the research and take it home, and you can read how to use it. And so those kind of tools and resources created by groups like the APSAE, they're peer-based educational resources. They're practical. They're something you can use, something you can modify back at your office and back with your board of directors. And I think those are invaluable. And it's those tiny bits of progress are going to be more consequential over time than the big program that gets all of the headlines and all of the money. And I think that's a little known fact. 100 people doing something small is going to be as much as one person doing something big. And I think that's the power of associations, is taking people's aggregate contributions and putting them together.
Indeed, that's the power. And quite frankly, today's conversation, I bargained less, but I got more from you, and I'm sure all the listeners today have been able to understand and see your view and take some takeaways from this conversation. So our parting conversation could be that what is that one, how excited are you about the future of APSAE, and what message that you would like to give to our association community, or even to us, to APSAE organizers, to take this forward?
I think the APSAE is a necessity in a modern world economy. And if I was a leader of APSAE, what I would take away from all of this is that it is important for you to lead as you believe you need to lead, not follow other parts of the world. Our colleagues in the Asia Pacific region have lessons to teach everyone everywhere, as they have done for thousands of years. And there's lessons to be learned from Europe and from Africa and South America and in the United States as well. But there's no reason to think that the executive class and who are active through the Asia Pacific Society Association execs don't have their own insights as to how to adapt to a dynamic and changing world, because their societies and their economies have done so for thousands of years. You have lessons to teach, not just to take, and I look forward to my participation so I can learn and bring those back to the people I work with, and so that we can compare notes across the globe in ways that our ancestors have been doing for thousands of years. And we're just an extension of that. And looking forward to my participation and what I learned from my participation with APSAE.
Thank you, Din. Thank you so much for this. In fact, I love this free-flowing conversation, which doesn't look into one particular direction. And talking to you has always been a pleasure. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart and your good wishes for APSAE. And I'm sure our members and the participants, those who are listening today, they have something to learn from you and to make best use of it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Pleasure to talk to you soon. Bye-bye.